Mom is barred from entering her son's wake, and the father says, "You never cared about him." Genesis arrived at the wake with her head down, her chest crushed by the news that still burned. Her oldest son, Dylan, had lost the fight against the illness that had followed him for years. She needed to say goodbye, even if her legs could barely hold her up. But before she could enter, she was stopped. "What are you doing here? You never cared about him." Zachary, Dylan's father, snapped, blocking the doorway with his body and his chin raised. "You know that's not true. I was always by my son's side. I only kept my distance because the court gave you custody, and I could only visit once in a while," Genesis said, her voice breaking. "Close the door now, and don't let this woman in," ordered Evelyn, Zachary's wife, cold as she signaled to the attendant. The door slammed against Genesis's leg, and through the sliver that stayed open for a second, she managed to see the casket and the pale cloth covering Dylan's body. "I just want to touch his hand. Please, let me in for 1 minute so I can say goodbye to my son," Genesis said, holding her breath, eyes fixed on the narrowing gap. "You disappear when he needs you and show up to make a scene. Leave before I get someone to throw you out," Zachary shot back with measured contempt. Genesis felt the blame Zachary hurled at her weigh even more. She looked around and saw people pretending they weren't hearing anything. She swallowed the tears, stepped back in silence, and walked away from the door without being able to say goodbye to her child. The days that followed were quiet and full of pain. When she couldn't stand not having answers anymore, Genesis went to the clinic where Dylan had been followed, determined to speak to the doctor. "Doctor." "Mark, I need to talk to you, please," Genesis called out as he was leaving the building, intercepting the doctor who'd been responsible for Dylan. "Of course, Genesis. We can walk over to that bench. This isn't a good place to talk," Dr. Mark suggested, cautious, glancing around. They walked to a bench by the clinic's exit. Genesis sat with her hands clenched, nervous, trying to find the strength to begin. "Why didn't anyone tell me he'd gotten worse? On my last visits, they told me he was stable, and then suddenly I get a call that he's gone, with nothing else," Genesis asked, her throat tight with grief. "I should have reached out to you, but Zachary threatened me, told me to stay in my lane. I was a coward and kept quiet when I realized the boy's routine was being broken," Dr. Mark confessed with contained shame. "Why did he threaten you? What was going on?" Genesis pressed, eyes locked on him. "I had set up a routine notebook. Evelyn, besides being the stepmother, was Dylan's caregiver. She was responsible for giving the medications and writing down the times, warning signs, and any notes. In the last week, the reports coming to me didn't match what I'd asked for. There were gaps, delays, loose ends," Dr. Mark explained, brow furrowed. "So this notebook exists, and it might explain what happened in those final days. Where is it? How can I see it?" Genesis asked, fingers tightening. "The notebook stayed in Dylan's room. That was the routine. Leave it there. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm telling you what I saw. If you really want to understand, try to get access to that notebook. Carefully, and without exposing yourself too much," Dr. Mark advised, low and firm. "If I can get it, will you explain what each failure means?" "I don't understand the terms," Genesis asked with urgent restraint. "I'll help you. But be careful with Christopher. He's likely very shaken by his older brother's death, and you, as his mother, need to try not to push too hard. Bring the notebook if you can, or any part of it," Dr. Mark replied, concern plain in his voice. Genesis nodded and left the clinic feeling that, between the weight of grief and guilt, there was now a taut thread pointing somewhere. Late that afternoon, Genesis walked to Zachary's house with the sense she was stepping into hostile territory, but she knocked gently anyway. "I came for Dylan's routine notebook. The doctor told me about it. I just want to take a look. I won't be long," Genesis explained with what voice she had left when Evelyn opened the door. "Rehashing this is only going to hurt Christopher. "You're not coming in. This is what's best for everyone," Evelyn replied, planted in the hallway. "I don't want a fight. I just need to understand. Please, let me look. I'll hand it right back," Genesis said with quiet resolve. "Go home. You weren't part of the effort, so you don't get an explanation now," Evelyn cut in, angling her shoulder to block the way. Genesis tried to take a step inside, but Evelyn shouldered her and grabbed her arm, brusquely blocking her path. "Don't shove me. I just want to understand what happened to my son," Genesis protested, hands raised. At the back of the hall, Christopher, the younger son of Genesis and Zachary, appeared, standing in silence. His red eyes fixed on his mother, as if tired of begging for help without sound. When Evelyn saw him, she turned to scold him for standing in the hallway. In that instant, as she looked away, the boy ran to Genesis and, trembling, quickly placed in her hand a page of notes about Dylan's medication. "Thank you. I got it. I'm leaving now," Genesis whispered softly, steadying her gaze on her son so he'd know she'd understood the message. "Good. Get out of my house and stop stirring up trouble," Evelyn snapped harsh. Genesis left without the notebook, just the folded page tucked under her blouse, and her heart burning at what she still didn't have the courage to imagine. She hurried down the street like someone fleeing a fire. "I'll protect you, my son. I promise I won't stop," Genesis murmured, touching the fold in her blouse where the page was hidden. The next morning, Genesis waited leaning against the school wall, eyes trained on the gate, until she saw Christopher cross the courtyard. "Christopher, it's Mom. I need to talk to you for a minute, please," Genesis called carefully. "Mom, I can't take long," Christopher answered in a thin voice. "I read the notes on the page you gave me. The doctor mentioned a routine notebook. He said it's really important to understand what happened to your brother." "Can you tell me what was going on at home?" Genesis asked, urgency softened by care. "The week he got worse, the alarms that remind us about medication times didn't go off, and 2 appointments were missed. We didn't even leave the house those days. It was like nothing had been scheduled," Christopher said, voice shaking. "Why didn't the alarms go off? Did someone turn them off?" Genesis asked, her hand almost touching his shoulder. "I didn't see anyone turn them off, but I saw Evelyn take the phone and mess with it, and after that they never rang," Christopher reported, wringing his hands. "Did you find anything out of place? Anything that really worried you?" "I need to know everything," Genesis pressed, low and steady. "I saw Evelyn hide a small bottle on top of the cabinet. I climbed on a chair when she left and checked. That wasn't the usual spot. And now the notebook stays inside the bedroom, locked, but sometimes the door is left slightly open. I can't grab it without someone noticing," Christopher confessed, eyes brimming. "You don't have to risk yourself. But if one day you see she's distracted and it's truly safe, you can try to get the notebook. We'll pick a quiet time to meet and I'll take it from you," Genesis instructed, trying to be his harbor. "I can try when she goes to the store." "I can try to take it and hide it in my backpack," Christopher said, wiping his face with his sleeve. "If you get it, bring it straight to me. We can meet right here after school. I'll be waiting where you saw me today. And if you can't, send me a message. I'll understand," Genesis agreed, clear and careful. "Okay, I have to go. They're calling us," Christopher said with a short wave. Genesis nodded silently and stepped away from the gate slowly. For the first time since the wake, her stride had direction, as if the ground had given her a path back. The next day began quietly. Genesis got up without checking the clock, threw on the first clothes she saw, and left determined to go to Zachary's work to talk to him. "I'm waiting for someone. It'll be quick. I won't cause any trouble," Genesis told the building's security guard. "If you don't make a scene, you can wait over there on the side," the guard replied, not exactly firm. Genesis leaned against the wall and kept her breathing measured. When she saw Zachary approaching, her heart leapt into her throat, but she stayed where she was, determined not to back down. I need to see our son's routine notebook. Those notes could explain the sudden decline, and I'm entitled to those answers, Genesis said, steady, looking him in the eye. You're irresponsible. You vanish for weeks, and then show up to assign blame. You used to throw the boy off schedule. Everybody knows it, Zachary retorted with a short laugh. I already told you I didn't vanish, and you know that. I was kept away by the courts against my will. And now I want to understand what happened inside that house in his final days, Genesis answered, without dropping her gaze. You're not seeing anything, and if you talk to Christopher again without my permission, I'll take real action, Zachary threatened, stepping closer like a man closing a door with his body. You're threatening me again in front of everyone, after threatening Dr. Mark. Is that what you're doing? Genesis prodded, voice contained. Don't put words in my mouth, and stop using the doctor's name as a shield. You didn't take care of the boy when you should have, Zachary snapped, jaw tight. I'm going to keep pushing until I see the notebook, because I know the truth is in there, Genesis said, not moving an inch. I said no. And if you don't get it, I'll make you get it, Zachary growled, grabbing Genesis's wrist and shoving her a step back hard and fast. Let go of me. You have no right, Genesis shot back, her voice sharp. Leave before I ask them to remove you, Zachary cut in, dry, releasing her arm and gesturing toward the guard. I'm leaving. I won't give you the show you want, Genesis answered, drawing a long breath. At the end of that week, Genesis returned to the clinic and waited in the narrow corridor until she saw Dr. Mark coming. I brought a page I managed to get. Christopher slipped it to me, Genesis said, extending the paper. Let me look at it carefully. We can talk over by the window, Dr. Mark suggested, walking with her to the quietest corner. I don't really understand it. I just see times and blank spaces. Please explain it to me, Genesis asked, anxious. I see delays here, gaps, rushed entries, but I don't have the full picture. It's not enough for a solid report. I need the entire notebook to have a firm basis, Dr. Mark explained. So it still isn't enough. I have to get the whole notebook, Genesis murmured, frustration tight in her throat. The signs are serious. Don't ignore them. But again, be careful with Christopher. He's in the middle of the fire. Don't expose him to direct confrontations, Dr. Mark warned, worry obvious. I understand. I'll protect my son, and I'm still going after that notebook, I promise, Genesis said with resolve. If you get it, bring it to me the same day. I'll read it right away and give you the right steps, Dr. Mark assured, handing the page back carefully. Genesis tucked the paper into the inside pocket of her blouse, thanked him in silence, and left the hallway knowing the only bridge to the truth was the notebook locked in that room. A few days later, the phone rang at home. Genesis answered without hope, but Evelyn's voice came through, dry and direct, like a door slamming. I set aside some of Dylan's things. If you want to pick them up, come later today, Evelyn stated, emotionless. I'll come. Thanks for letting me know, Genesis answered, contained. Late in the day, Genesis stepped into the yard of the house where Evelyn lived with Christopher, and the box was placed in her hands like someone dumping leftovers without meeting her eyes. There's a scratched toy car, a drawing, and a t-shirt. That's what's left, Evelyn commented, face turned aside. Thank you. But before I go, I need to see the routine notebook the doctor said to keep. It's important, Genesis asked, keeping her stance still so as not to light the fuse. Trying this again? I already told you. You're not touching anything in this house, Evelyn retorted, irritated. I just want to see what's in it. I need to understand my son's last week, Genesis insisted, urgency in her voice. You're not seeing anything. Get out of my yard now, Evelyn ordered, shoving Genesis's shoulder hard enough to knock her off balance. Please, I'm asking you respectfully. This is all I'm asking, Genesis protested, clutching the box. Respect? You never respected anything, not even your own kid. Now you show up here faking grief, Evelyn screamed, yanking Genesis's hair in a quick move. trying to drag her toward the exit. "Let go of my hair! Are you crazy?" Genesis yelled, yanking her arm free. "Leave before this gets worse!" Evelyn snarled, pointing to the gate like an ultimatum. "I'm leaving, but I'll be back with whatever it takes to see that notebook," Genesis said, straightening her blouse and her mussed hair. Genesis walked to the gate under insults that splattered bitterness, and with her hand on the latch, she heard quick steps from inside, light and decisive. "Mom, I managed to get it," Christopher whispered, agitated, placing the notebook in Genesis's hands along with a small bottle. "My love, what is this bottle?" Genesis asked, startled and fearful, turning the label carefully. "The bottle I told you about, the one Evelyn hid on top of the cabinet," Christopher answered, trembling. "The date's expired. My God," Genesis murmured, chest tearing between rage and panic. "Mom, you'd better go, before she notices," Christopher urged, pressing the notebook lightly against his mother's chest. "I'm going. You were so brave. I'm so proud of you," Genesis said, moved, stepping back fast. She hurried out, hugging the notebook to her chest and slipping the bottle into her bag. Behind her, Christopher closed the door with shaking hands. That same day, Genesis reached the doctor's office. The corridor felt too short to hold her urgency, so she tapped lightly and went in when the receptionist nodded. "I got the notebook, and I brought a bottle too. The date's expired. Look," Genesis said, anxious, setting everything on the desk. "Close the door and sit. Let's go through this together," Dr. Mark said, pulling the notebook over and opening it to the final week. There are pages with nothing on them, and others with scribbled notes. "Is that normal?" Genesis asked, breathing short. "No, it's not. There were fixed times and signs to watch for. I see entire days with no entries. I see scheduled appointments that weren't checked off. And this bottle," Dr. Mark said, picking up the vial and reading the label. "It's expired. You see that too," Genesis said, unable to hide her tremor. "It is. And this, together with the empty stretches and routine failures, is enough proof. I can reach and sign a clear medical report. The decline wasn't the disease itself. It was caused by those responsible inside the home. Medication was given off schedule, and even with an expired drug. This isn't simple carelessness. It's severe negligence," Dr. Mark declared, meeting Genesis's eyes. "Tell me what I do now," Genesis asked, the urgency of someone who finally sees a bridge. "I'll prepare the document and give you written guidance. You take it to the police station and file a formal report. The rest will move forward with the case," Dr. Mark explained, voice steady with responsibility. "Thank you for not staying silent this time," Genesis said with relief, holding the notebook like a piece of living proof. That same day, with the report in hand and the bottle and the notebook secured, Genesis went to the police station and filed the complaint. She turned in all the documents and described the assaults, the threats, and the serious failures in Dylan's care. She also requested protection for Christopher, making it clear the boy was at risk. The case was officially opened, but Genesis left with the feeling that for the first time she had set the truth in motion. Days later, Genesis got word of Evelyn's arrest, accused of neglecting Dylan's care in a way that led to his fatal downturn. She also learned Zachary had been arrested, held responsible for hiding the truth and falsifying information. During the investigation, Evelyn admitted she had stopped following the instructions because she no longer wanted the responsibility, and Zachary chose to cover for her failures instead of facing reality. The report and the evidence Genesis provided supported each action taken. Soon after, she was also granted custody of Christopher. She picked up her son in silence, bringing only his backpack and the drawing he kept folded between his notebooks. At home, Genesis made space for him on the couch and placed the drawing in a box with Dylan's keepsakes. That night, she set the report on the table and felt Christopher rest his head on her shoulder. There were no speeches, only the certainty that, this time, no one could say she didn't care. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.